If you clicked on this video, that probably means you're interested in going to India, but maybe need a bit of help with how to get there.
But first of all, it is a good idea. We really recommend India. We had such an amazing time. It's a really cool country to travel to. It's really affordable and there's a lot to explore.
Loved every minute of it, from the culture to the food to the natural beauty.
So much natural beauty, so much diversity in the culture and the beauty as well.
The busy cities, it has everything, and in this video, our plan is to share with you all the tips and tricks and information you need to know so that you can go on your own trip to India.
Let's do it.
We're Keith and Dev, and if you're new here, we are two Canadians trying to experience as much of the world as we can. We have spent the last 2.5 years traveling, and today we wanted to share with you everything we have learned to help you plan the perfect trip to India.
Subscribe to follow along.
Okay, so we are going to start at the beginning with before you even are in India. You're planning to go. First thing that you need to do is
get travel insurance.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's kind of like, what? But it's actually a big part of traveling altogether, travel medical insurance. We specifically use Safety Wing. You don't want to be caught in a situation where you are stuck and it's going to cost a lot of money in a foreign country and unwell.
Spoiler alert. If you're going to India for over a month, most likely at some point you're going to get a little sick.
That doesn't mean you're going to be trapped in some hospital or some bad situation, but generally when you travel somewhere far from home, you want to be covered for travel medical insurance. We use Safety Wing. It covers you in 180 countries around the world. It's really nice. It's pay-as-you-go subscription based.
It's one of the most affordable travel medical insurance on the market. It only comes out to a couple dollars a day. Honestly, it gives you cancel anytime. So if you can be flexible in terms of how long you're traveling for, it gives you that safety net.
It's that peace of mind.
Making sure you're healthy while you travel, because health is number one.
Now, all that aside, you won't necessarily get sick in India, but you can with like food poisoning.
I got oatmeal. I haven't had oatmeal in over a month, and after food poisoning, this is exactly what my body needs, because I've been living off bananas for the last 36 hours and I just needed the carbs and the lightness because my belly is still making noises, so this is perfect.
But generally, you need travel medical insurance, and
we would recommend Safety Wing. So we do have a link below if you're planning your trip and you need travel medical insurance. The next thing that you're gonna need is requirements to get into the country. So most countries need visas to enter India. We are specifically Canadian, so for Canadians, you can apply for an e-visa online.
We have the link to the right website, or at least the website that we use to get our visas.
And it does say it can take up to 2 weeks, so please make sure you do it well in advance of your trip. There are 3 different visas in Canada. You can either do 30 days, a year, or 10 years. We did the year visa because we didn't know how long we were going to stay in India, and we ended up being there for 9 weeks, which was incredible.
Yeah, it was perfect.
So we would recommend the year visa. And the last point we want to make is, again, do it ahead of time. For us, it did only end up taking about 3 days, but we've heard it can take up to 2 weeks to a month. So be prepared.
And then print it off and have copies of that when you travel.
You have your visa, you have your travel medical insurance with Safety Wing. Next up, you need your flight. When you're flying to India, most likely you're gonna fly into either Delhi or Mumbai. Those are the 2 biggest airports. And our big takeaway from that is make sure you have an eSIM card when you land.
Right, so if you follow our channel, you know that we use Holofly when we travel, which is an eSIM that covers tons of different regions in the world, and we used it the entire time we were in India. So we got there, we activated it, and it was just done. We have data right away.
And this was so important because we arrived at 4 a.m. India time. I think we've been already awake for like 30 hours.
Of course, it's busy as if it was noon in Canada though.
Yeah, this is in Mumbai, and we were able to order an Uber right away from the airport. No questions asked. It was very straightforward, safe, and an excellent way for us to arrive then at our hostel very early. The next thing that we are going to talk about and share with you is time of year and when to go to India. And people often say the best time is between November and April for like India as a whole, because it is less hot then, because it can get very warm.
We went from February until April. It was a perfect time. We started south and then moved up north.
As the heat also moved. Depending where you want to go in India, look into the weather, because India, everybody says it's like a continent in itself.
It's a subcontinent.
It's so huge. So depending where you want to go specifically, the time of year and where to go will change. So look into that yourself for where/when you want to go. The next thing is currency. So in India, they use the rupee.
Yes, the rupee and exchange obviously fluctuates depending on what currency you use. It's a very cash-heavy world. Cash is king in India. You can still use credit cards. You can still use credit cards to book trains and buses and Uber and stuff like that online. But generally for things, everything's gonna be cash. For foreigners, actually for people that are in India, they actually have a very advanced financial system.
A very advanced financial system. It's incredible, but it is not.
Foreigners can't use it. Because we don't have an Indian ID.
Yeah, so if you don't have an Indian ID, you can't use this system. So often places will only take cash. So we would recommend bringing a little bit of cash so you have some on arrival, and then obviously there are ATMs and things that you can use. While we were there, we had an HSBC credit card.
Which is a no foreign transaction fee, so we're not getting charged from going from Canadian to Indian rupees every time we make a payment.
And there are actually HSBC banks in India, so we would go directly to our bank to get money out, and that was the cheapest way for us to do it.
When the bank was open too, but essentially you want to take a good amount of cash out to make it worthwhile.
Every time, yeah.
Every time you go to the ATM, and then spread it out on your stuff.
And we did have no issues while we were in India in terms of taking a cash,
Nope,
so that
we were
was
good.
good. The next thing we are going to go on to is language and culture. So within India, there is a lot of languages. Do you know how many?
I think it's 28. 23. I think it might be 23.
Close, you were close.
22.
And there is more languages than 22, but there are 22 official languages, which is amazing. So this means depending where you go in India, the language in that area is going to change.
And the culture too. So we mentioned we started in the south. So we went from Mumbai and then south to Kerala. And the language there is entirely different. And we interacted with people in English as well, but was there more English or less English?
So in the south, the second most popular language is English, not Hindi. So that was something we learned when we got there. So pretty much everyone we interacted with had learned English or knew how to speak English, which we were very surprised about.
The main language was this right here, the Malayalam?
Yeah.
Malayalam?
And then the second most popular language was English, whereas in the north, Hindi is the most popular language before English. But for the most part, most people speak English in India.
Yeah, it was really easy to get around and to speak with people.
And to communicate.
I mean, they take English in school. English was really, obviously ex-British colony and all. It was everywhere.
Everywhere.
Pretty easy to talk to people.
Honestly, it was amazing. Also, just shout out to India for majority of people spoke at least 3 languages that we met.
Yeah.
Like, amazing.
Indian people were really cool. And honestly, India was phenomenal. The people there were really, really generous and kind.
The next thing we are going to talk about is transportation, because as we mentioned, India is huge and you will be taking a lot of transportation if you want to see a lot of the country.
We took a lot of buses. Everyone takes trains. You can take overnight buses that have nice actual lie down beds. In terms of buses and trains, we were able to book all those things with 1-2Go Asia, which we really trust and recommend. Our links below. So trains are really good and they're really popular in India.
You can get a train from anywhere to anywhere. There's a really good app.
Where's my train?
We figured that out about halfway through our trip.
Really practical.
Super helpful to let you know if your train's delayed or what platform it's on. Would recommend. The other thing that is really popular and gaining more popularity is planes, like flying within India. Yeah. It is affordable. Obviously, it's going to be more expensive than taking a train or a bus, but at the same time,
sometimes it's not worth taking like a 48-hour bus. Okay, let's get to Ubering and sort of like taking cabs and stuff. India's not really walkable, generally. It's not at all. Like no sidewalks. So you end up having to take Ubers or tuk-tuks.
/rickshaws.
Yeah. What's cool though is that you can do Uber Auto, which is Uber Rickshaw, Uber Tuk-Tuk.
What we learned too along the way is Uber is only really in the big cities. It is continuing to grow, so it might start to be in the smaller cities, but definitely in the big cities, take advantage of it because it's a really great price, and then you don't have to worry about bargaining and making sure you have the right amount of cash and all that stuff.
And so if you're in a smaller place or you don't have Uber, or you don't want to use it, you can always ask the accommodation that you're staying at. They always have a recommended and trusted driver or someone that they can call. Use your accommodation, they always have people.
And
use Uber if you can.
We would also use our accommodation to ask what the appropriate amount would be, because we don't want to undercharge people and we also don't want to get overcharged. So we would ask, what should this amount cost? And we'd go off that price. So that's also another tip. Some places, for example, we did this in Kochi, we took a public bus from Aleppi all the way up to Munnar, which was $9 for 2 of us, and it was like a 6-hour bus drive.
It shouldn't have been 6 hours, but anyhow.
It
Should be
was
like 3, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty windy and wild, but it was a very cool
Intense.
experience. So you can do it very cheaply, but then on our way back, we actually got a private car to drive us back, and that was about $68.
Which
for
is quite a
2
bit
people.
more, but then if you think about the amount of time and energy it costs us to take a public bus.
And also
It's kinda
on the
worth
way
it.
back, we were going to the airport, and the bus station was very far from the airport, so we would have had to then Uber to the airport. And so for us, time and money-wise, it was worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually did take a couple of public buses too in Goa, right? And they're kind of fun.
Oh
and
yeah,
they're
they
really
were
affordable.
really affordable, felt totally safe on them.
Once
So-
you're at the bus station too, you ask at the counter and they speak pretty good English and wherever you are, and you can hop on little buses and get to wherever you need to go.
Yeah, so the public transportation, depending where you are in India, can also be really good.
Yeah.
We also met some people that were traveling in a group that just had a car and a driver with them and were driving around. So if you have a big group, that is something to look into.
Higher
as well.
budget too, you can hire a driver and then they drive you everywhere.
Yeah,
You know?
so, and that is totally doable. So we know there was a lot of information there for transportation. If you do have any questions, feel free to comment them below and
Absolutely.
we're happy to answer them for you.
Accommodations. All right, so India has a huge variety of accommodations, whether it's low budget, high budget, extreme luxury.
There are tons of options depending how you like to travel. As you know, if you've watched some of our videos, we are more on the budget side.
You think?
I think so. And so India was an excellent place for us because there are a lot of very affordable places that are really nice. Like
Yeah.
I would say you could be a lot more budgety than even we were, like
Yeah.
a lot more budgety.
A lot more. So the main website we used was booking.com, and that would find us nice accommodations, and we're talking like ranging from what, $15 a night to $50, $60 a night.
And also depending where you are in India, the prices are going to be different. If you're going to a more popular destination within India, obviously the prices are going to be a bit more.
And if you're looking for hostels, well, there's a lot of hostel options, but if you want a safe hostel every time and like a safe bet, we recommend the Hostel, which is a hostel chain across India.
We loved it. We discovered it partway through our trip, and I'm so happy we did because we were never disappointed with
No.
where we stayed. There's food at the actual hostel,
Yeah.
so if you're ever worried about what to eat, you have a backup at your hostel.
Which is always really nice. You don't have to go out and explore it all the time.
There was always good Wi-Fi too, and good like common areas so you could meet people. We also did stay at some really unique hotels as well that
We'd recommend
we would
too.
recommend as well.
Like in Munnar in Kerala, the tea plantations, we stayed at a place called the Wild Trails.
was
And it was really beautiful. Yeah, beautiful spot on the tea hills.
A bit more luxurious, but we would recommend it. It felt like almost like a honeymoon destination.
Yeah, resort, and all their produce and all their food was like locally sourced and they grew themselves and stuff like
We
that.
stayed also in the south as well, in Kamaricom, before we went on the houseboat, which we'd also recommend doing a houseboat tour because that's an accommodation and an activity. We would recommend maybe doing a bit of both.
We also stayed at a really high-end luxury place. We use Marriott Bonvoy points, which we always talk about. If you're interested in that, let us know. We use a credit card that gets us points with Amex.
And there is a wide range of types of accommodations. If you're a solo traveler, Hostler also has some really great dorm rooms. We also were in some bunk bedrooms. We also stayed in a really nice place in Mumbai that was also a hostel.
Yeah, that was lovely.
And we would totally recommend that one as well. So if you have any questions or you want any recommendations for hotels, hostels, or places to stay throughout India, again, just comment below. We are happy to help.
All right, next category, food. Indian food is phenomenal and it definitely varies depending on where you go.
We were
It changes everywhere.
so impressed by the food, but also I was so surprised by how different the food was in the south than in the north. I had actually been to the north before, so I knew what to expect there, but I was so pleasantly surprised with how delicious and different the food in the south was.
So I think the biggest tip that we can give based on personal experience for us
This is also our personal preference. You don't need to do this.
was that to avoid sort of food illnesses and problems was
We decided to be vegetarian.
being vegetarian. So we obviously, that helped us a lot. We only got sick once from food poisoning. We avoided eating fresh produce and fresh food that have no peel.
So
Right,
we would
so if it
still
was-
buy bananas.
Cooked things are okay, but anything raw,
We wouldn't eat. So like
because-
salads, cucumber, carrots that are raw.
because you don't know
we avoid
what
it.
kind of water was used or to rinse it off or clean it off and stuff like that.
And so going off of that, in terms of water, we did not brush our teeth even with the taps while we were there.
Which is something that we didn't do before, but we took it pretty seriously this time.
And maybe that is why we got sick a few times in Southeast Asia.
Maybe.
Who knows?
But bottled water was key. We unfortunately had to buy bottled water all the time.
But on that note, not as much as we thought we would have to, because a lot of the places that we stayed, a lot of the accommodations, would have big jugs of filtered water, so we could refill our refillable water bottles,
really
which
practical.
was super helpful, and also I felt happy about, so we had less plastic waste.
Last thing in terms of food, maybe you're interested in this, spice tolerance, spiciness. Is it spicy? It can be. We thought the south was spicier than the north. Your food or your spice tolerance sort of changes as you travel. If you say no spice, sometimes you get 0 spice, sometimes it's still spicy.
Yeah, it just depends where you are, who the chef is,
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. Also,
It wasn't actually that spicy.
we did get sick in Jaipur specifically, which was about halfway through our trip, and so our spice tolerance might have also gone down because we had to eat oatmeal and bananas for a few days.
Simple food. We went to actually more of like the non-Indian diet for a little bit, the vegetarian.
And that's a good point too, is if you are afraid that you don't want to eat Indian food for 2 months straight, although you shouldn't be afraid because it's amazing.
Yeah.
There is a surprising amount of like Western foods or like pastas or pizzas. There's 2 other things we want to mention about food. The first one is about me. If you know, I am gluten-free. I'm kind of allergic to it, so I can't eat gluten. And honestly, it was really easy to be gluten-free in India. I will say, especially in the south, I was pleasantly surprised at how many of their like bread type of things they have that are rice-based. That would be like what Keith gets as well. It wasn't like I was ordering something
It was like
separate.
the norm, right?
The norm was like all rice-based things. In the north, it was also possible to eat totally gluten-free. And then the last thing that we want to mention about food is street food. Is it good? Is it not
Should
good?
you do it?
What you should do. Personally, for us, the only time we ate street food was when we did a food tour. We specifically did a food tour that got really awesome reviews. We'll also link that below if you're interested. It was in Jaipur. It was amazing, and it was a great way to eat street food in a safe way and food that you know is going to be good. And we also got to learn a lot about the food. So we would recommend food tours while you're in India.
Going with a local that knows sort of the area, you're probably better off. We don't have iron guts.
That's what I was gonna
the
say.
thing.
If you know us from our videos, especially Keith has a very sensitive tummy.
I was pretty good in India, except for the one time when we both got sick.
Yeah.
And then the last couple of days of our trip too,
We got sick
sort of
because we ate cucumber.
Oh yeah.
And again, we're pretty strict with that because we wanted to avoid getting sick. But if you feel like you do have an iron stomach and you can eat whatever,
Do it.
you do you.
Yeah, you do you,
Whatever you want to do. We are going to move on to safety in India. Is India safe?
Yeah, oh, is India safe? I don't know.
I would say yes.
Absolutely. Honestly, it's kind of funny. I think people don't think it's safe, or you might get scammed, or there's a lot of, no, it was great.
We
It
felt
was really safe.
very
People
safe,
are
honestly.
so kind and generous. And
The whole time we were there, we were very safe as well. We wouldn't put ourselves in situations to be unsafe. We stayed sort of on the tourist track. We went to places that were recommended to us.
Yeah.
But in doing all of that, we never felt unsafe. And the people that we talked to were always super kind and helpful. The only place that we heard not so great things about.
all the bad stories you hear are actually based in Delhi.
And that being said, we loved our time in Delhi, but because of that, we made sure we had planned activities that we did. So we did a day in Delhi that was incredible with a guide, which we also would totally recommend that to her. And then we also did
awesome.
a cooking class in Delhi. So the whole time we were there, we were with locals, and it was an excellent experience. Now, there are some scams. I don't think we ever really got scammed because we were always on the lookout for them. You can literally look up obvious scams.
Typical Indian scams and stuff. Generally, they're not really scams. They're more, here's a little favor out of kindness. Now I want money for it. Whether it's, putting paint on your face, that happened to us, but that was sort of obvious. We saw that coming. Going to the Pakistan-Indian border in Punjab, guy puts, a little flag on our faces. Obviously, he doesn't want money. He wants money. It's that kind of stuff. They give you a favor. They want to give you a blessing at a religious temple. They want money for it afterwards. So just sort of like always sort of say no, or if you say yes, expect to
pay a little bit. Sure. And also it's people's way of making money, so like keep that in mind as well. It is in terms
sometimes it's worth it.
Yeah, and also you can say no. Like feel free to be like no and walk away. Like
they
before
actually
you do the blessing.
People weren't aggressive there. We didn't face any like intense please or in your face.
No, people
Really?
were really, really kind. And that being said, a lot of people did help us just out of the kindness of their heart and not ask for money.
And if you said no, they sort of said okay.
They respected that.
Yeah, it was respectful.
So that was our personal experience, but we had very positive experiences in India. We are next going to talk about what to pack / what to wear. So for women, in certain areas, like for example in Goa at the beach, you can wear a bathing suit. There's a very big expat community, so you can wear shorts or dresses for that. But then in certain parts of the country, you do want to dress a little bit more conservative. So lightweight pants were huge for me. We did a whole packing video that I have my entire wardrobe in, if you want to check that out. Lightweight pants, so I have these Unbound merino pants that I love and would totally recommend. And then the other thing is you want to make sure your chest is not showing at all, always having your chest covered. And then in certain places, making sure your shoulders are covered.
Yeah.
So in certain places, if you have like thicker straps, that's okay, but you just kind of, depending where you are in the country, you want to be respectful.
Yeah, so you could wear whatever you want, but that's not really the vibe. It's not really kind to do that. You know, it's not respectful.
Exactly. And another thing is while we were in Jaipur, we did hand block printing, which was amazing. And we actually made scarves. And so
that was cool.
I used the scarf the rest of the time. So if I was wearing a tank top, but we decided we wanted to go somewhere I could easily cover my shoulders.
In terms of dudes, I wore pants quite a lot. The joggers are like really like cool travel pants that are breathable. No one really wears shorts, it seems.
A few other things that you're gonna wanna bring is have a pair of closed-toe shoes as well as sandals, because the heat, sometimes you're gonna want sandals, and because of potentially dirty roads, you might wanna have your toes covered. The other thing is, if you wanna see as much of India as we saw, you're gonna want a down jacket because it can get really cold in the north.
We went all the way to the mountains. We went to the Himalayan mountains, and it was really cool, but it actually was also quite cool. So we wore like merino socks and double layers of pants and down jacket. We had watch our packing video, you can see that we can layer quite a bit.
Also sunscreen on that note, because the higher you get, obviously, well, you want sunscreen everywhere, but that is something you want to make sure you have because it can be more expensive when you get there, so bring it.
A couple weeks before we did that hike, we were in the south and it was like 40 degrees and we were wearing our lightest clothes and sandals all the time, breathable, like athletic clothes as well. So you kind of want a variety because it's, like we said, a subcontinent. There's a lot.
And so low-key plug here, we have a great packing video for all types of weather, if you are curious.
We just made it.
We just made it, so it's great. Last thing I want to mention is bring medication. If you have certain meds that you like, for example, for us, Gravol is something that is a Canadian brand. It's like anti-nausea medication.
Nausea medication.
We would recommend bringing some from home. One thing that is really good though is it is very easy to get antibiotics in India.
Super easy.
If you do get sick and you need to buy antibiotics, you can get them at like any local pharmacy. We did bring some with us because we didn't know that, and it's nice just to have. We like to always have some with us, but that's just something to let you know. We're now going to give you a brief little itinerary of what we did. We were in India for 9 weeks, which I know might sound like a lot. It wasn't. It went by so fast.
We landed in Mumbai. We stayed there for a few days, and then we headed south. So we went down to Goa, hung out there for a little bit, went down to Kerala. And those two places are phenomenal. We honestly really recommend Goa and Kerala. And then we went down to Aleppi via the houseboat tour. That was phenomenal. And then saw the tea plantations in Munnar. After that, we flew to Rajasthan in the north, in Jaipur. After Jaipur, we went to Pushkar. So from Pushkar, we actually headed north to Punjab, went to specifically Amritsar, where we did the border, Golden Temple, that was phenomenal. And then from Amritsar, we went to Dharamsala in the mountains. From there, we went to a place called Shimla. And then we headed to Rishikesh, the yoga capital of the world, which was a beautiful place as well. And then from there, we went down through Delhi to Agra. And Agra is where the Taj Mahal is. We had to do that, of course. And then headed back to Delhi, did a quick little couple days in Delhi, and then head out from there.
It was a wonderful trip. I would say we saw as much of India as we possibly could in that amount of time. Also seeing the south and the north. For us specifically, we really wanted to see nature and be in nature, and there is a ton of nature in India. So that was a lot of our focus with the south and the north, but also getting the cultural experiences as well. So that being said, your India trip could look very different than ours or very similar depending. We wanted a little bit of everything, but we already know we have to go back. And that being said, if you have a shorter period of time, you can also make your trip and your itinerary different and smaller. It's amazing. You can do whatever you want with the time you have in India. Lastly, we wanted to mention some helpful apps that made our trip to India a lot easier. The first one is actually WhatsApp. You've probably heard of it, but that is a really great way to communicate with people. Everybody has WhatsApp. It's a great way to communicate with hotels, tuk-tuk drivers, anything and everything.
Especially if you have a data plan, only data plan, no phone number, you can just communicate with everyone all the time.
And everyone has WhatsApp, so that was easy. Where's My Train, as we mentioned earlier, is super helpful for knowing where your train is, if it's delayed, what platform.
I remember we rushed to a platform and we thought we missed our train, but then we checked Where's My Train, and happy to see that it hadn't arrived yet. But yeah, it was really helpful for a couple moments.
We also use something called TripCoin, which is a free app to keep track of your budget.
Your day-to-day, sort of like day spend, actually.
So if you're like us and are kind of traveling on a budget, we write down all of our expenses and it just keeps us on track. So that's a really good one. We use our MARRIOTT Bonvoy app to look for hotels or deals. That's how we found some amazing deals both in Delhi and in Kochi to stay at. Another one is Keith's favorite thing in the world, Google Maps. We use Google Maps honestly everywhere all the time.
So always flagging things, always sort of like taking notes as to where we want to go, looking at distances, how far things are, routes.
And then off Google Maps is Google Reviews.
Google Reviews is big.
Which for finding good places to eat and restaurants.
That's sort of like what we lean on a lot.
Yeah, if we're not asking recommendations from our hostels
or hotels. If we're doing our own research, we're looking at Google Maps reviews for restaurants.
Which is so helpful. And then Uber, again, in the big cities it works really well. In medium-sized cities like Jaipur, didn't work as well.
It's a little more spotty, but that's when you can talk to your accommodations and get a special driver maybe who has a tuk-tuk. Uber Auto is really affordable and really nice when it does work.
Booking things, we'll quickly go over the booking sites that we use.
Yeah, so mainly we use booking.com. The Hostler, you can book on their website, that was great. Booking on One2Go Asia for transportation, for buses, for trains, for everything, for local buses, very practical. And then the other thing we haven't mentioned before is actually using Airbnb experiences to book tours and food tours and activities.
Because there are a lot of wonderful activities to do in India and experiences you want to have that are very affordable. We did so many cool things while we were in India, and honestly most of our activities that we did were through Airbnb experiences.
Yeah. Overall, a couple last minute things. India's not super walkable. Be a vegetarian. Spicy is not that spicy, it's fine. There's a lot to see. It's English speaking. It's safe.
It is so much more welcoming than you would imagine. Your senses are always heightened in the best way possible. I feel like we learned a lot about ourselves. We learned a lot about the country. We want to go back and see more.
Man, it was beautiful.
It was the most affordable country we have ever traveled to as well.
That's a plus. But yeah, it was spiritual, deep, sort of empowering, eye-opening, and
kind people. Everyone we
colorful.
met and talked were so kind.
And of course, beautiful scenery as well. Actually, really nice nature, really, really nice landscapes.
One last thing that I will mention that is going to sound kind of random, but be prepared. If you are freckled and lighter skinned and blonde, you will get asked in popular places to take a lot of selfies.
Selfie?
It's all out of kindness as long as you're okay with it.
Yeah.
That being said, you can totally say no thank you. We did that a lot as well, because be aware if you say yes to someone, more people are going to come.
We didn't do it that much. We did it a couple times when we were running around, because sometimes it was like the worst timing.
Yeah.
But at this point, I like to think that we're in a lot of pictures in a lot of people's phones in India.
But then people just want to talk to you, and it's a great way to learn about other people's trips, because India is also really cool in that there's a lot of domestic tourism. So it's a lot of people that are from the south traveling north or vice versa.
If you're staying in the hostel, you'll meet a lot of domestic travelers, and it's really cool to interact with them and they speak good English.
And a great way to learn more about India as a whole. So overall, we would 100% recommend traveling.
You should go. If you're watching this video, you should go.
And we hope that this was a helpful video and you learned a lot about India or ways to make your trip better / easier.
Absolutely.
So thank you for watching, and
see you in our next video.